He's back, and quelle surprise, he's done it again.
Look at the material.
You should be going home anyway.
You can be the judge of it.
Hi, I'm Lady Genevieve, and absolutely none of you should be surprised that I'm doing a Big Bug review. I have been waiting for a new Jean-Pierre Jeunet film for ages. I would go online regularly to just look him up and see if he had finally announced a new film. I remember when the story that was going around was that he was struggling to get funding and that if he couldn't secure it, he would consider going to Netflix as a last resort. I know some people have a love-hate relationship with Netflix, but if they're the only ones writing Jean-Pierre Jeunet a check to do his thing, I have to give them credit for that, and you should too. Who is Jean-Pierre Jeunet? Jean-Pierre is a very famous French director, probably best known for his masterpiece, Amélie, or the full French title, Le Fabuleux Destin d'Amélie Poulain. I have it on my wall, and in what feels like kismet, Amélie is set up next to Joanna from the Stepford Wives, and this new Jean-Pierre film feels like it has elements of both of those films, especially given its robotic sci-fi concept. Amélie is one of the greatest films of all time. It's the type of film that filmmakers watch and they wish that they had been creative enough to make it themselves. I don't want to go on an overly long tangent about Amélie because this is a Big Bug review, but if you have not seen Amélie, go do so because you are missing out a lot. There's something uncomfortably dystopian about the idea that a person can be at an otherworldly level of creative innovation, make Amélie, and still struggle to secure funding to make a new film. I don't know if this film was the main thing that he's been struggling to get funded, or if he has attempted to shop other ideas around and still been told no. In an increasingly algorithmic, formulaic entertainment industry where so much is pushed towards franchises, cinematic universes, and, my least favorite of them all, propaganda action films, watching Jean-Pierre Jeunet's Big Bug was such an affirming experience. I'm going to talk about the film in a more vague way and get into more of the detailed spoilers later in the video, so you will have the option to click off if you want to watch the film first before hearing me get into all of those larger and more specific spoilers. So I turn the screener on, and the first thing that pops up is the content warning, which is customary, and the only things that were warned were sex and nudity. And I ended up finding this to be unexpectedly funny. I wrote this down in my notes when I was watching the film, but when I saw that, I wrote, sounds pretty French to me. Now, if you are watching this and you are French, please don't get upset. I'm not making fun of you. It's actually the complete opposite. I'm making fun of the way the American entertainment industry is strangled by puritanical values that have no place in today's world, but somehow they still exist. American media has zero issue overloading a film or a series with every type of violence you can think of. But sex? Nudity? A scandal. An uproar. The MPA is the death rattle of the Hays Code. It's completely obsolete, but somehow refuses to go away. Big Bug introduces us to a futuristic world that takes place only a couple of decades from now, so it's the not-so-distant future. But because it's a Jean-Pierre Jeunet film, you are immediately immersed in this visually spectacular world that is beautiful, but also at least slightly unnerving. The production and design is incredible. The entire look of the universe is so much fun to look at. There's a wonderful mix of practical effects and VFX. One of the things that was particularly unexpected about watching the film was that, in a way, it almost felt like watching a play. You are predominantly locked into following the core group of characters in one location. This is probably why they were able to just cut loose and throw so much money into making this house feel so immersive and tangible. There are a couple of instances where you have to see something outside of the house, either just a broader, wider look at the world or the neighborhood or some secondary location, and those brief glimpses sometimes don't have the most picture-perfect looking VFX. At least one of the examples I'm thinking of, in a way, feels like it theoretically could have been a deliberate stylistic choice because it was within the context of being a commercial for something within that universe. But this house and all of the moving parts within that house were so much fun to watch that, in hindsight, it made me really appreciate how much more slowly the first half of the film moves compared to the second half. It means that you are given the time to explore this world, and more specifically, this house. Learn about what's inside it, and learn about these people who are also inside of the house. In watching it, it felt like right when I was starting to get acclimated to this universe, and I was thinking, okay, is this it? Are we going to get anything else dramatic happening? And then we did. A lot of times when you have this type of a futuristic, fantastical setting for a story, you'll get some sort of exposition dump monologue near the beginning of the film. Either the lead character, some objective narrator, or just a paragraph of text will tell the audience those things, but I found it refreshing that the film just asks the audience to pay attention and learn about the world by watching it present itself one detail at a time. If you are a fan of Jean-Pierre Jeunet, it should not surprise you that Dominique Pinon has a cameo. It's brief, but would it be a Jean-Pierre Jeunet film without Dominique Pinon? No, it would not.
What did you do? That.
Isabelle Nanty is also in the ensemble of lead performers. Even if the only Jean-Pierre Jeunet film that you've seen is Amélie, you should remember her and Dominique pretty well since they played Georgette and Joseph. They have that very memorable hookup, which Amélie orchestrated. At the workplace, Amélie, Big Bug feels like a film that benefits from repeat viewing. It feels like there are interesting questions being posed about the relationship that we as people have with technology. On the one hand, technological advances can be great when it acts as a tool to increase the efficiency of things like cooking and cleaning and other tasks that are a lot more work to do if you don't have very advanced tools to help you get them done in a timely manner. However, advancements in technology are not always a good thing, and the film is really effective in showing both the mundane and the insidious sides of that. Overall, I really enjoyed this film. It was a breath of fresh, unpolluted air, of creative authenticity that simply cannot be manufactured by technology or algorithms. It can only come from people, and that's a good takeaway that perfectly matches the messaging of the film. That's also going to be my closing line for this spoiler-free section, because now I want to get into spoilers. I'm not going to talk about everything in the film, just a few things that stood out, but the world-building details of this film were fascinating to hear because it really unveiled how the film is not supposed to be some world that exists in a completely different universe to ours, but that it was an imaginative interpretation of the current trajectory of our human species. For example, the character detail of the adopted daughter Nina, who was adopted from the Netherlands, they mention that she was adopted because rising seas flooded the Netherlands. That's very obviously a detail in the world building that is coming from a place of anxiety about the negligence of imperialist capitalist governments who prioritize profits in the most short-term ways over the well-being of the global population, the environment, and the planet. In this Big Bug world, books are a rarity and almost but not quite entirely banned. On one hand, this feels like the lamentation of the decrease that we are seeing in physical media. A lot of artists seem to share this sentiment about not only books, but also about the physical media of film, series, and music, which have grown increasingly digital in their existence. One of the parts that stuck out to me way more than I would have anticipated was when you have a character speaking to the Yonex system and dealing with what is essentially an automated system in order to try to get the home's AC turned back on. Something about watching that play out provoked this visceral reaction of how frustrating it is when you're trying to make a phone call to accomplish a task, or more often than not, solve a problem, and you have to deal with this incessant automated system. It takes forever to hopefully get someone to answer that is a physical living human being. But then on the more extreme side of things, there is, of course, the surveillance, which goes hand in hand with the customized advertisement device, but also the military and police threat, which is what really picks up in the second half of the film. I have to give credit to the actors who played robot characters. The makeup and costumes, of course, helped, but those performances would not have been nearly as convincing if the actors did not deliver the way only truly great actors can. Also, I don't know whose idea it was to bring back the evil Inspector Gadget teeth for our main big bad, but I appreciate you, whomever you are. Structurally, the film felt very unconventional because it really does lull you into a false sense of security instead of just steadily, consistently increasing the tension as the movie goes on. You get to the midway point and the struggle seems a lot more small and intimate, just within that house and the interpersonal dramas. You're aware that there's a bigger problem happening elsewhere outside, but we don't really see much of that until that RoboCop shows up and everything goes to hell. When he started destroying those books, it just twisted something in my spirit to where I really felt the devastation of that loss. I didn't know how far it was going to go. Were all of the books and the other antiques going to be destroyed? Were any of these people going to survive? At the time of recording this, I don't know what the reaction is going to be to the ending, but I can honestly say that I liked it. There's something so delightfully whimsical and spot on about a clerical error made by this imposing, menacing AI threat being what caused the heroes to win. We often put so much into this idea of the strengths of technology, but technology can go wrong. How many times do we have a technical malfunction where we have to turn our devices off and on again to make it work? Or if you're someone who posts or watches videos on YouTube on a regular basis, you're probably familiar with the fact that creators on here often struggle with the technology that is supposed to scan our videos for what is or is not appropriate according to YouTube's ever-changing guidelines, but the system is flawed. It's all coded algorithms, and these machines do not understand nuance or subtext. Everything about Jean-Pierre Jeunet's Big Bug defies the conventions of Hollywood's increasingly factory-produced methodology of what will or will not receive funding. Everything is about following trends, the current being franchises, sequels, prequels, remakes, reboots, and also an overabundance of action films that perpetuate propaganda that upholds the military-industrial complex and the prison-industrial complex. That's a rant for another day. I cannot emphasize enough how happy I am to have been able to experience this film. As much as I would have loved to be able to see it in a cinema and on a big screen, there are still a lot of people who don't feel comfortable going to the cinema for health reasons. They're a lot more selective about what they're willing to buy tickets to. But this is on Netflix, which means it has the capacity to reach so many more people than it would have in a traditional cinematic release, especially with how xenophobic US companies tend to be about their distribution plans for films from other countries. Why have I still not seen the new Paul Verhoeven film? Hopefully, if you've made it this far in the video, you've already watched Big Bug, but if you haven't and you went ahead and watched all of this video anyway, watch Big Bug. And when I say to watch it, I mean watch it. Do not do that thing where you half watch it and then you have it open in one tab and you're doing something else in another tab. Put your phone away for 2 hours and give this film your undivided attention. Treat yourself, boost the numbers for Jean-Pierre Jeunet's virtual opening weekend. I would love for him to get his own Zack Snyder type of deal where they keep him on retainer to make whatever he wants whenever he wants. If the other sources of funding don't want to help a visionary artist do his thing, but Netflix will, we need artists like him, so let's have at it. The level of creativity and imagination that this man has is in outer space. Perhaps that will be the setting for his next film, and I will be there opening weekend, like I was for this one. Also, as an extra little tidbit, I just love that in the end, they still managed to throw in a found family element. I love a bit of found family. Thank you for watching my review. Make sure you stream Big Bug on Netflix if you haven't seen it already, and I will see you in the next one. Bye!